without blaming your ex, what could you have done differently in your last relationship?
Okay, this one's easy. And it's only easy because I've done the work and I've talked about it several times before. And I'm a pretty reflective person, or introspective person. So the thing that makes this easy for me is I believe in accountability. And so one of the first things that I did when my relationship ended, which was an almost 30-year relationship, right? My ex-husband and I officially divorced August 2022. I almost said last year, but shoot, it's a different year already. And in the time, a lot of what I did as it related to my healing process was I took accountability. And I took accountability for the ways that I showed up in that relationship. Because certainly it takes two to tango, right? As a licensed therapist, as a certified coach, as someone who works with women to help them get to the other side, I had to sit down with myself and see myself and kind of do an autopsy of the situation. And some of the things I learned about how I showed up in that relationship and how it contributed to the demise of that relationship were things that allowed me to really lean into my healing process. So it allowed me to do the work that I needed to do necessary, right? It allowed me to do what was required to not repeat those same things. So what are some of those things? One, I didn't show up fully as myself. Quite frankly, I didn't really know myself well enough to show up as myself. When my ex-husband and I met, I was 22. I had just graduated from college. I didn't date a lot in college or high school because I was about them books. I was all of that. And then we started a family really quickly. And so I got on these other identities before I was fully steeped in the identity of who Rhonda is. So that's one thing. Another thing I would have done is I would have communicated more effectively. Now, I know you're probably thinking as a coach and a therapist, how are you not communicating effectively? Well, that's the reason coaches and therapists need coaches and therapists because it's hard to see the picture when you're in the frame. But part of one of the things that I would do that I know was really destructive to my relationship was I was shut down. And when I was shutting down, I did it for what felt like it was in the best interest of the conversation, right? It was in the best interest of the conversation. But what I realized on the outside in, looking back at it, is that it contributed to a lot of distancing, right? Because if you're not really speaking and you're not really being emotionally vulnerable to have the types of conversations that are required in long-term relationships and where you're building and growing and learning each other. Another thing, and I'm not blaming my ex for this, but one of the things I noticed that he would always say things as if he definitively knew me. And I'd say, that's not me. So I don't think that I did a good job of communicating who I was in that moment. But there was also some assumptions about who I was, and I had assumptions about who he was, right? So I think just being able to see each other as we evolved would have been a beneficial thing. What else? I would have not acquiesced as much. Look, there were just times that I stayed in that relationship because we had children and it was just easier to do that. I didn't want to disrupt the status quo. And I think that had I made some moves earlier, that perhaps we might have been able to get back. Because, I tell people all the time, like, I'm a dope individual. He's a dope individual. We just didn't make a dope couple because we got so far away in so many things. I would have gone to therapy sooner. I definitely would have done that. Individual therapy and then couples therapy for the both of us. Yeah, I would have done that. And I would have made sure that we were around more couples that had conversations about relationships with older couples who had survived that. So those are things that I'll take into my next relationship. If there is a next relationship. But those are just, until or unless we take accountability for what we've done, we disempower ourselves to make the changes that are necessary to have the life that we want. So absolutely, I could do that without blaming him. Or blaming myself. We both did the best that we could in that situation at that time. I firmly believe that.